Alright, how's it going guys? Diamond here, and today we're going to be creating our very own mob. This is going to be completely through Blockbench and using Model Engine and whatever resource pack plugin you want to use, but it is not required at all for this. And of course, mythic mobs. You can use some other type of plugins that can collide with Model Engine, but we're just going to stick with mythic mobs and Model Engine. It's going to be up to 3 to 4 part series depending how well I can do it, and we're going to create a mob. We're going to texture it, animate it, upload it, and give it some abilities. This series is taking me a long time, so if you guys could leave a like in the description down below. If we could reach a like goal of 50, that would be really good, meaning you guys really want to see the next part. And we're going to be using Revivenode for everything, mainly for hosting and setting up the server. So if you guys want to use them, I'll leave a link and a discount code for up to 15% off your very first Minecraft server, only $1 per gigabyte. And you can get even lower using my promo code. So make sure to check them out in the description down below as they are sponsoring this video. But other than that, let's get straight on to this behemoth of a video, shall we? Alright, let's get started. Let me just point out I have zero script for this. What I usually do to start the process off is usually have a drawing or reference or some idea of what I'm going to create before I start creating. Of course, start simple, don't overcomplicate yourself. I'm no model expert and I'm probably the worst person that can texture a model in the world, but that's perfectly fine. I'm just here to demonstrate what we can actually do. So like I said, again, I'm no expert. I do have a reference I'm going to keep on my other side of the screen where I can see what I want to try to model. So I'm going to try to create a giant rock creature with a moving jaw and arms that can pivot and just some small little legs that you can walk around with. Nothing, again, too complicated. We're going to be using generic model for this. So as soon as you click it, you can start naming everything, and we will do Rocky for this. And then I'm just going to keep the texture 16 by 16. I'll click confirm, and we can actually start this now. Now, if you never used Blockbench, this UI may look completely different for you, but we're going to focus on this right-hand side right now. We're going to add a cube and add a group. Now you have to add 2 different types where I'm going to set up the layout first and then we can continue from there. First thing we're going to do is hitbox. And from there we're going to add a cube and we're going to type in hitbox as well. We want to make sure that the cube is in the hitbox folder as well. And we can actually scale it up and move it however you like. But we're not going to worry about that just yet, as we can just turn these off for now. And we can add a new group or a new folder, however you want to call it. And we'll name this one Rocky. And we can add our first ever cube that we're actually going to use. From here, we just can start modeling whatever we want. This first tutorial is mainly going to be showcasing Blockbench itself and how it works. So we have a moving key where we can move the block on the Y, X, and Z coordinates. And you can also click S to resize it. And again, Y, X, and Z coordinates as well. For this, I'm going to start with the jaw, and you can also click here and rename it. So I'll put jaw. And it's always good to be naming each one of your body parts, as it will be important later down the line. Keeping everything organized is super important. Now, as you can see, I wanted a moving jaw and a head. So I can go ahead and just copy this and name this to head, move it up by a block, and then resize it as I want. So right here, we would have a moving jaw, but the pivot is incorrect. So you have to go into the pivot tool, move it up. If you already use Blockbench and a lot of stuff I'm doing is completely incorrect, I'm fine with that. I never said I'm an expert, but we'll head on with it. As you can see here, we do have a head and a jaw now, and I can actually move the jaw up and down. So it looks relatively like that. Pretty straightforward. What I want to do though is actually make it a bit smaller so we have only a portion of the jaw moving, and then we'll add the body right about here. So as you can see, every time I move it, I'm going to change the pivot as well. And the reason we're changing the pivot here is the pivot decides where the moving starts, or the best way I can explain it is how it's going to move. And it is super important to make sure your pivot's in the correct place, because when you start animating, that's going to matter a lot. So as you can see here now, I do have it. It's opening a little too much, as you can see, because I have the pivots on the lower end. So I will just put it on the higher end. Go into pivot and then just move it up by 1. And now if I do the mouth again, it works perfectly like that. Now, as you can see there, I have a head. I'll work on the body just by adding another one. And again, you always want to keep everything organized. So here I have the head and I have the jaw. What I'm going to do is create a new folder and name this head. I'm going to put both of them in there, and then I'm going to create another folder and just name it jaw. The reason I'm doing this is because each folder is a bone and a armor stand within the game. So the game's going to be looking for the folders instead of a individual cube. As you go into animate, it'll reference the folder as well as the actual bone structure. So it doesn't care about each little cube, it only cares about the folder. What's in the cube is going to be as one giant mesh together. So again, you always want to make sure the pivot's in the correct place. This is the folder, not the actual bone. I need to reposition it again, and that's fine because I have the basic idea of where I want it. There we go. And I'm going to do that as well for the head itself because that's going to be super important. I'm actually going to move the head layer out, and I'm going to pivot as right there. I think that's actually... yeah, that's fine. I can even put a little bit more back. So as you can see here, when I go to animate it, I can actually, well, I can't animate it because I need to test the animation first. So I'll just leave that. We can delete it later. As you can see here, I can move the head and then I can move the jaw separately and it works just fine. Let's go back into edit and let's model this a little bit more. If I'm going too fast, I understand that, but there's no real good reason in how to explain all this other than you starting off your own creation and having fun with yourself. Create something you inspired to have in a game. If you wanted a new cow, you can add that. If you wanted a new monster, you can do that as well. But now that I have everything organized, I'm going to create a brand new group. I'm going to put it inside the Rocky folder, and I'll call this one body. I had a new cube as well, and I'm going to resize it down here, so it doesn't matter for me. And I'm just going to make it about like this. A bit thicker, and then I would just bring it all the way up. Make sure it's aligned correctly here, as this is where the main upper body is going to be. And I do want it to be symmetric, so I'll just change its size again. You could always click S, you can click the box itself. It's really up to you, and I'm going to lower it a little bit, make it a bit more chunky in the back, and I think just one more should be fine. I'm liking that. Now I can add more of an illusion that this is a really rocky guy. I'll go more into depth but a little bit later onto that. But for now, let's just add the main cubes and see where that goes. So I got a little ahead of myself here, but basically what I just did is add a little torso and a stomach area and then a joint here. And what we're going to do is just create another region for the legs. I created little stubby legs. It's fine. I don't think it's the best, but it's going to do for the tutorial. I'm just going to add another group and then name this, I believe that's the left leg. So we'll do leg left, and I can put these three in here just by dragging them and dropping them in. And just like that, we now have legs. Now the reason I just didn't immediately create the other ones on the side is because we can just copy it and rename it right leg and just move it over, as it will save us a lot of time other than having to remodel everything again. And there we go, we got some little stubby legs. Might do some small tweaks here and there, but overall he is looking fine. Next thing we need is some arms, so I'm gonna go ahead and add that just by creating a new group again. And if you want the group to be connected, such as when he moves his upper body and you want another group to be connected to it, you can add a group under it. So for example, if I want the arms attached to the body itself, I would put the arms under the body. So here I can put right, left arm, but the legs are separate here. Now I can just add a new cube and continue the same process of adding it how I think or I can imagine this monster being. A lot of this is just creating and basically almost fantasizing on how you want your creatures to look like. So as you can see here, we have our little Rocky dude pretty much almost set up. Now, let's say, for example, you wanted to add more details, but you don't want to create folders, as again, these are entities in the world that are constantly going to be spawning and going to be more CPU intensive. Now, I'm not saying just spawning one of these are going to cause a lot of lag. Of course, it won't, but again, there is desync issues that you don't want. Now, you can add smaller details, like, for example, I want him to be a rock dude, so I could try to add some more rocky formations around him. I'll create a new cube, and I'll resize it a little bit, and I'll try to add it to a piece of his body. Now, you can only do on cubes on a certain degree, so you can only put it up to, if I believe, 22.5, 45, and up to 90, and of course all the negatives. Now this might sound a bit weird to you what I'm saying, but it's basically the rotation of the cube. You can only choose one axis, so I can put one here, as this is going to be an example, and I can try to change it. So here's the rotation. You can only choose one of these at a time for the cubes, and then you can change it, so only up to 22, 45, and so on, up to 90. I will do a 45, and I'll change the Z 45 degrees, and I can just pull it back up here. And as you can see here, it is going to give it a bit more of detail and make it look a bit more unique just by having it like that. So if now I click away from it, it'll have a more rugged body of cross, which will look really cool. But again, keep in mind that you can only do it in a certain rotation, only one at a time. But for example, the body, you can have that however rotated you want. This way, you can have it rotated this way. Anything is fine there. It's only the cubes. So I'm gonna go ahead and add some small details here and there and just spruce this guy up a little bit. So I'm stopping it real quick just to show off this small little issue here. As you can see, as I rotate it, you can see it's glitching, and that's going to be a problem because it's going to glitch in game as well. What you want to do usually for that is just come up to here and inflate, and from 0 you want to put negative 0.002. What that's going to do is make the block slightly smaller, and it won't cause any flickering or glitching or just genuine block collision issues, and that just helps out a little bit. So that's a small tip that I learned, and I want to pass it down. So there you have it. Mine's a complete mess. It's totally fine. Again, this is all for tutorial purpose, and I think I went a little bit overkill. But now what I'm going to do as a final step is I'm going to organize everything and make sure everything is in the correct folder, as if anything is wrong later down the line, you will get a complete mess, such as I don't have these in the correct folder, so they don't even count. They count as an individual cube that is not in the folder, so you can't even touch them. But for example, I may have some things in the incorrect folder, so I'm gonna go ahead and fix that right up, and we'll continue with the tutorial. All right, as you can see right there, it's set up. I've organized everything, and what we're going to do now is set up the pivots. We want to make sure everything is in the correct positioning as well. So I'll set the main pivot of this character. I'll put him as eye height right about here, and just make sure it is about there, and just centralize it a little bit. That's fine. Next thing we're going to do is going to the head. We're actually going to rename it because we can't actually have it this name. We need to do h-head, and that should work a lot better. What this will do is mainly whenever the entity is looking at you, it will rotate the head towards you. So we're not going to animate the head as much as every other body part. But now I'm going to go ahead and actually put the correct pivot for the head itself, and that actually looks fine, as I believe I switched it before. The jaw is fine as well, and we're going to do the body now. We need to centralize a little bit more. I'm going to do it in the upper torso area. So right about here, that's great. Just want to make sure it's pretty centered. And the next thing we're going to do is the right arm, and as you can see, yeah, that's totally wrong. So here's a demonstration that I'm going to show you. It's really good to separate the arms this much because I do have the right arm everything correctly, but whenever I do any movement, he's going to be limited to this. And that doesn't look too good, does it? And I can see I have missed some body parts right there, which I will change immediately. So what we're going to do to fix the arm problem is, as you can see here, if I don't know if I can actually go in it, but just trust me on this, I made it a little bit more longer so I can create a second pivot here. What we're going to do for that is go into the arm itself, and we're going to create a secondary folder inside the arm, and we'll call it lower arm, and we'll put, for example, right, R for right. And we're going to select all of these and put them in the lower arm. And the reason we're doing that, and of course I set the pivot in the correct place as well, is so we can do things like this. We can move his arm just a little bit more. It looks a bit janky, I know, and this is supposed to be in or out, it doesn't matter for now. And we can just do more movement, so he can have his arm more like this, and it just looks better and more natural. And it's also really good to show off how your monster is going to be positioned, or your creature, anything like that. So I'll probably give him a bigger stubby hand. But that looks good. I'm going to do the same thing for the left arm, as that will give a little bit more movement and just, again, feel natural for the monster itself, and it'll look natural for the player. So put L, lower arm. So left lower arm. Now I have to go again and look for every single item that is in the lower half of it. Just need to make sure that the pivot's in the correct place, and we will have the arm complete. Next thing we just finish off is the legs, and that will pretty much be the pivots complete and done. Now if we even wanted to, we can go ahead into the folders itself. We could position and see how we want our monster to look like. So I'll always have him look a little bit down, and I could have the body. That's not what I wanted. I gotta move the legs out. So I could have the body a little more. Why is it doing that? Body a little more like that. I can move his arms. So what we're doing here is basically creating his quote-unquote T-pose, how he's going to look constantly. As soon as he spawns, this is going to be his first his first position. And you will see this more likely in games where they have him in, again, a T-pose. But for this case, we're not going to put a T-pose, we're just going to put a generic pose that he's always going to be spawning in with. As you don't see that with genuine Minecraft mobs either. So there you have it. We have our monster pivoted and on his actual default position. And what we're going to do is come back to this little box I was talking about beforehand, and we're going to rescale it. This is going to be the size of the actual hitbox of the monster, so we need to make sure it is precise. So I'll come here, get a general idea of where we want. Anything within this area makes the mob hit. I don't know if this is the correct term, and probably not at all, but I'm going to say hittable. It's probably more targetable that way. But what we're going to do is go into the box itself. We're going to click on texture and click on transparent. As you can see here, anywhere in this area, the mob can be hit. So we're just going to make it a little bit wider like that. So as you can see there, it's working. We have our mob. We haven't added texture yet, but overall, I have a good feeling about this already. We're not going to do animations just yet. What I'm going to do is just put a small coat of paint over him and just have him on a finished state. So next episode, we can actually get him ready and start animating. What we're going to do for that is just click create texture, and we can specify the resolution. So we'll do a 16 by 16 here. Click on template, and I'm going to click box UV just because I like it, but I'll disable it after, as that is not allowed. So I'll name it Rocky, click confirm, and I selected the wrong texture. What you want to do is make sure you have the correct model selected first. So first select Rocky, and then we can continue from there. And now he is ready to start getting painted on this. This looks really nice, and I genuinely just love creating models to see something that's in your brain being created. Now we can go over to paint and start actually painting him off and seeing how well all this is going to be. The reason I mainly did 16 is because that's Minecraft's default resolution. And in the future, I do want to try to use this guy. He could be a small little boss for another area in the future, or anything really you could think of. And I do want to specify anyone that tries contacting me as, hey, can I get the model so I can try it out myself? I'm sadly going to answer with no, because I don't keep my model saved constantly, and I can't just be expecting someone to always appear with a request to have one. So I'm sorry now, but I just won't have it later. But what you can see me doing here right now is just adding a quick coat of paint onto everything so I can know where it's going to need coloring later, and generally just get an idea of how this monster is going to look like with color, with the actual colors that I imagine it with. But overall, I'm liking it so far. There we have it. We have our model with a basic coat of paint. We can start seeing how it's actually going to look, and I'm really liking how it's starting to look, really. The paint really gives it all together and makes it look what I have in mind. You can go ahead and start adding more details to it, such as shading and everything. I'm still missing a few general areas where there is paint, but that's perfectly fine. If you want to, you can do a drop down here and actually see it if you'd like. And that's definitely not what I want. But for example, if I just wanted to paint in this small area here of yellow, I could, because I do have a general idea that I'm pretty sure it's going to be gray, but I'm pretty sure that players won't be able to see it. There it is. There's the yellow I was looking for. But again, I'm pretty happy where it currently stands. Is finish it off and start texturing it. Now, I know I just said I would start texturing it, but what I mean by this is instead of using the paint bucket, I'm going to be using the paint brush and adding small gradients of the same color and probably more details, such as giving this behemoth of a monster some eyes. I'm not going to explain how to texture because genuinely I don't know how to. This is more of a process that either you have someone that you know can texture for you, or you kind of have to learn on your own. Alright, so there we have it. We textured our monster. Honestly, it looks like trash, but this is the first time I'm finishing texturing my own mob, and I'm pretty happy with it. Nonetheless, I feel like there is a bit of a mess going around here, and I can clean it up. Honestly, there could be large improvements on the texturing. I think that's the main problem here, but overall, I'm happy with the product, and we could possibly put this in the game if we wanted to right now. But we're not. Hey, sorry for cutting in like that, but I had to do some small tweaks into the model itself because it honestly looked like dog trash. I changed the eyes and a little bit of the monster itself. It looks a lot better without all that color going all around. I'm doing some more improvements here and there just to make the model look a little bit more presentable. Overall, it just looks a lot better, and I gave a little more something to the eyes. But yeah, just want to let you guys know that, and that's why probably the thumbnail looks different than the actual model itself in the video. So for now, what we're going to do is save our project. So file, save project as, and then just provide it a name. So I'm going to leave it as Rocky. We're going to go ahead and click save, and we will continue this on the next episode. For those who could watch this episode entirely, thank you very much. This was an hour-long procedure, and I am exhausted after this. But overall, thank you so much for watching. That'll do it for this video, and come again for part 2 of how to create your own custom monster.